is the way I grew up, and this is the way it shall be. We have to be really careful about that because it suggests an intransigence on our part and an unwillingness to change and effect the meaningful change in our lives. Makes no sense then if we're going to not do something that will change. We've got to do something that is effectively going to change the way that we think. All right? We've got to change the way we think and respond to situations. Ladies and gentlemen, it becomes important, and I'm going to say this, it is emotionally irresponsible for us to continue responding negatively to situations. It is emotionally irresponsible of us not to make sure that we effect the change that is necessary and needed in our lives. We have got to change. And you can look in your own lives and see how your relationships are affected by the ways in which we talk to each other. If you continue to change spouses, maybe it's time to look at what am I doing wrong. I know when my marriage fell apart, I did that introspection. I felt very badly. I did not want to be a statistic. I stuck the blame on me. Yes, he beat me up. Yes, he was physically and emotionally abusive. But I also said, well, what in me, did anything in me trigger that? Is there anything in me that I need fixing? So I determined that before I went into another relationship, the first thing that I was going to do was to fix those issues within myself so that I never take it into the next relationship. And that's what we all have to do. What we must do is we must fix ourselves. So we got to understand who we are, right? We got to understand who we are. We next have to come to this place, what am I going to do about it? What can I do about it? How do I change that? You change it by the way you think. In recognizing that there is something that is wrong, that's the first step. Then we have to find the tools that are available. Now, you can go to a therapist who will walk you through a 10-step, 3-step, 6-step program. You can come to a life coach who will walk you through it. But essentially, it all boils down to this. Are you willing to change? Are you willing to change your thought patterns? Because in many cases, what we have found, like I told you the story about this gentleman, what we have found was he had an unwillingness to change because he felt that it was not about him. He felt that we were all wrong, that he's fine. Do you know why? Because nobody had ever corrected it. Nobody had ever told it. And ladies and gentlemen, we've got to be able to, this is why it's important to surround yourselves with good people, because there are some people who can criticize you and don't mean well. And then there are others who will criticize you and mean you the world of good. But I tend to look at it this way. No matter what someone says about me, I tend to look at it to see if there might be something in it that I can learn. And if there isn't, I dismiss it and keep on moving. And if there's something I should learn, well, what's the lesson here? So it's very important then that we understand, in understanding our environments, in understanding what makes us who we are, the question then is, what are we going to do about it? Change. How badly do you want to change? Do you want to change? You change by changing the way you think about it. Remember, we talked about epigenetics and the role that it plays in terms of how we reprogram the way we think. Because essentially, you can't change your DNA. Nowadays, people are flirting with the idea of changing your biology so that you change the way you were born aesthetically, and by removing certain parts that make you gender specific. But do you and what they are discovering is that you have to change the way you think. So they take drugs and pills to ensure that that transformation takes place. So then it becomes really important now that after you have determined you need to change, what next are you going to do? You've got to transform. You've got to transform. You have to act it out. You have to deal with it. You act it out by saying certain things over and over. In my story, what I did was I made sure that I transformed the way I thought about the way my boss criticized me. I made sure I did that. And that process for me was rather late in the day, by the way. This only happened back in 2007. By then I began to realize, that will help all of us to accomplish that thing, to make us the best version of ourselves that we can be. And the first thing that you have to do, we've talked about this, is transforming our thought patterns, renewing your mind. That's the first place to start. It all begins and ends with the mind. You know, studies have shown that when they tell people that you have 6 months to live, that in fact those persons go on to living for extended periods of time. And when you ask yourself that question, why does that happen? It's because people then throw their whole lives, they have literally transformed their way of thinking by saying to themselves, if I only have 6 months to live, then I am going to be the best that I can be. I'm going to do everything that I always wanted to do, and I am going to make it happen. I'm going to be happy. So literally what they do is transform their thought patterns. When you transform your thought patterns, it takes place in your mind, then it transfers into your biology, and before you know it, it becomes a pattern and a way of life. How important it is for us to change our patterns. Do you see the connection? We've got to change our thought patterns because it all begins in the way we think of ourselves. Many of us, I have found, have grown up hearing stories of others or people when we've had the experience where people have told us, you'll never be anything. You'll never do anything good. You've heard the story of Pavlov's dog, right? You'll never be anything. You'll never change. You'll never overcome this. You'll never get this done. Well, what we find happening is that once that starts happening, you literally walk it out and live it out. But if you transform by, just like they told me, in spite of my circumstances when I was growing up without a father, my grandmother kept telling me that I was going to be a great person one day. I'm going to do great things one day. So it's not a surprise then that you end up walking out what you do. If you tell your dog every day that he's a worthless dog, then the dog is just going to walk around and look down on the ground. But if you tell your dog, I love you, if you create an environment in which you're playful, and you create that environment where positivity reigns, then guess what? That's exactly what you're going to do. So it's very important to renew your mind. And in renewing your mind, what you do is literally transform your way of thinking. You transform the triggers that set in place negative thoughts and emotions that create negative responses to life situations. Because make no mistake about it, life is going to happen, right? You live long enough, certain things are going to happen. And depending on your ethnicity, depending on where you are in life, things are just going to happen. You can't stop them from happening. Some are preventable, some are simply not. Some of them we simply make some mistakes, missteps, I refer to them, in our 20s and our 30s, and then we reap the consequences later on in life. But what we can do is transform the way and we think about them by renewing our mind. So every day, I get up, and I have certain affirmations that I say to myself. There are certain things that I tell myself every day. If I'm going into a meeting and I want that meeting to come out really well, there are certain things that I tell myself, no matter what happens in that meeting, I am still going to come out the way that I told myself that I would. So even if they said no, I still am going to have a changed mindset. It's all about the way you think. So every day when you wake up, no matter what happened yesterday, if you and your spouse argued last night just before you went to bed, what is the first thing you're going to do? You're going to tell yourself, when you wake up, it's a new day, it's a new start, and today I'm going to be the best version of myself. And I think that if we start the day off by having those conversations with ourselves, we will find that our days flow better. I think that all of us, we have various roles that we play. We're parents, we're spouses, we're sisters, we're brothers, we're daughters, we're sons, we're role models, we're CEOs, you're coaches, you're teachers, you're lawyers, you're doctors, you're judges, presidents, vice presidents, senators, and so on. Everybody has a role to play. But the primary role is the one to yourself. You've got to have that conversation with yourself every day. Renewing your mind, restating what you are here for, knowing your purpose, understanding who you are, understanding why you're here, so that you can effect that change. The other thing that we all need to do is to manage our emotions. Now, you're talking to somebody who needs some help, or who needed some help with impulse control. And when I found that certain activities by others triggered certain sort of behavior patterns in myself, what I did was I began to see about managing my emotions. I had to have controlled responses to certain things. Now, years ago, there was a time in my life when I was actually calm, cool, and collected. I mean, things didn't bother me, it didn't shake me much, because I was, I had come to that place in my mind where I was settled. But as life went on, and traumatic events began to happen more frequently, one after another, what I began to realize is that those traumas rewired the way that I thought. So it created in my mind a different set of thinking that was in direct opposition to what I am naturally made to be. And that was the conflict. That was the conflict. So the conflict occurred then, so what am I going to do about it? I had to do the same thing I just told myself. I had to rewire the way I thought about the situation, the way that I could control. And I used to tell myself, I can't control what someone else is going to say or do, but I can control my response to it. So for a long time, I didn't handle rejection really well. I had sensitivities. I'm just being transparent. I'm helping you, right? This is helping you. And so what I did was, I had to say, well, why are you sensitive? What does rejection mean to you? And so what I did was I talked to myself. I went to the root cause to find out why it bothered me. And then I reprogrammed the way I think. So I tell myself, I can't control you, but I can control my own responses to it. And since I have control and direct control over my emotions, then I'm going to be the best version of myself and put the best version of myself on display no matter what was going on around me. And so it becomes important then to manage your emotions. Now there are certain things that are just going to get some of us really worked up. I am not going to make any slayed promises, but there are certain things that are going to cause me to want to answer you. And my daughter Anna says it best. She can tell when I'm really angry, because she says my eyes go wide and black and I become very still. That must be something she observed. When she sees that kind of reaction happening, she leaves the room. She says, when mommy goes very still, she's really angry. And so that was one of the things I found out about myself. What triggers? So frustration then is my problem. It's not anger. Do you see? Find out what frustrates you. And when you find out what frustrates you, then you can fix it. So I found out there are some things that frustrate me. When there is intransigence, all of us have various levels of frustration, the various issues that attack us. And some of you are probably just sitting there like, no, it's not me. I'm so cool and nothing happens to you. And I'm here to say, the devil is a liar. Because all of us have experienced frustration from time to time. Now, the ways in which we choose to handle it, some of us are more introverted than others. And there are some of us who display, and there are some of us who choose not to show any emotion at all. It doesn't mean that it's not bothering them. It just means that they have greater impulse control. Now, studies have shown that people who are highly successful have what is referred to as great impulse control. And what that means is those people are so incredibly self-disciplined that they don't make impulsive decisions. Everything is thought out. And so what you have to do in managing your emotions, you've got to find ways to control your impulses. Now, I know I have an impulse to shop,